Some drugs make you hallucinate, and honestly, those are probably the most interesting drugs, so let's cover an iceberg about those. Be sure to subscribe, follow my Instagram, join my Discord, all that stuff, and let's get into this video. I don't want to fluff it out too much. Starting out with Operation Midnight Climax. Operation Midnight Climax was one of the more bizarre and ethically dubious experiments conducted by the CIA during the Cold War. It was part of the larger MKUltra program, which aimed to investigate and develop methods of mind control. The idea behind MKUltra was to see if techniques like hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and most notoriously the use of drugs like LSD could be used to control or extract information from people. Operation Midnight Climax took place in the 1950s and the early 1960s. The setup was straight out of a noir detective novel. The CIA established safe houses in San Francisco and New York City. These locations were essentially brothels where, workers of the night, under the direction of the CIA, would lure unsuspecting men. Once inside, the men were secretly dosed with LSD, and their interactions were observed and recorded through one-way mirrors. The workers were instructed to coax information out of these drugged men to see if they could be manipulated into revealing secrets. By the way, right now is as good a time as any for me to say that I am not condoning any behavior via this video. Drugs are bad for you. You should not be doing drugs. And if the YouTube bot is watching, this video is purely educational, purely informative. My last one got demonetized, so I'm kind of expecting this one to get demonetized too. Because, YouTube is dumb. I mean, it shouldn't be. This is purely educational. I'm not saying you should do anything bad or illegal. But anyways, let's get back into Operation Midnight Climax. So the purpose of this was to study the effects of LSD on unwitting subjects and explore its potential use in interrogation or even mind control. The agents involved in these experiments were often operating with minimal oversight and took a rather cavalier approach to the whole operation. The men who were dosed had no idea that they were even part of an experiment, and they certainly didn't consent to it. The ethical implications are staggering. Imagine being out for a night on the town, meeting someone, and then suddenly you're finding yourself in a surreal and terrifying situation, hallucinating and completely unaware of what was happening. The CIA was essentially experimenting on American citizens without their knowledge or consent. This raises pretty serious questions about human rights and government overreach. The man behind much of Operation Midnight Climax was George Hunter White, an officer in the Federal Bureau of Narcotics who was on loan to the CIA. White was known for his hard-drinking, rough-and-tumble approach to law enforcement, and he brought that same attitude to these experiments. He kept detailed diaries of his work, which later provided a window into these secret operations. The whole affair came to light in the 1970s when investigative journalists and congressional hearings started to uncover the extent of MKUltra and its various sub-projects. The revelations were shocking to the public and led to widespread condemnation and calls for greater oversight of intelligence activities. Many of the documents related to MKUltra were destroyed on the orders of then CIA Director Richard Helms, making it difficult to piece together the full scope of the program. However, what we do know paints a disturbing picture of a government willing to cross ethical lines in the name of national security. Alright, next up we have kykeon. Kykeon is a fascinating part of ancient Greek culture, especially in the context of its potential use as a psychedelic substance. To understand kykeon, we need to delve into the Eleusinian mysteries, which were highly secretive religious rites held annually in honor of goddesses Demeter and Pharisphone. These rites were celebrated in the town of Eleusis near Athens and were considered one of the most important spiritual events in ancient Greece. Kykeon itself was a drink consumed by the initiates during the Eleusinian mysteries. The exact ingredients of kykeon are a bit of a mystery, much like the rites themselves, but it's generally believed to have been a mixture of water, barley, and something called kanna. However, some scholars and researchers have speculated that kykeon might have contained psychoactive ingredients that induced a transformative, mystical experience in the participants. One of the most intriguing theories is that kykeon contained ergot, a fungus that grows on barley and rye. Ergot contains compounds that are chemically similar to LSD. If ergot or an ergot-derived substance was indeed part of this kykeon mixture, it could explain the profound and often ineffable experiences reported by those who underwent the Eleusinian mysteries. These experiences were said to bring about a deep understanding of life, death, and rebirth, aligning with the mythological themes of Demeter and Pharisphone. The effects of a psychedelic kykeon would have been significant. Participants might have experienced vivid visions, altered perceptions of reality, and intense emotional states, all of which could be interpreted as divine revelations or spiritual epiphanies. This aligns with the reports of initiates who describe their experiences as life-changing and spiritually enlightening. Alright, next up we have reindeer urine. Okay, so picture this. We're in the icy, vast expanse of Siberia, where the indigenous people like the Evenki and the Sami have been living for generations. Life here is tough, the winters are long, and the landscape is dominated by snow and reindeer. The reindeer aren't just animals, they're central to the way of life here. They provide food, clothing, and even transportation. Now, here's where things get interesting. Among these reindeer herders, there's a very special kind of mushroom that grows in the wild. Amanita muscaria, or the fly agaric. You've probably seen pictures of it. Bright red caps with white spots, straight out of a fairy tale. This mushroom has some serious mojo. It's known for its powerful psychoactive effects, but here's the catch. It's also pretty toxic if you just eat it straight. So how do you get the mystical, mind-bending experience without the nasty side effects? Enter the reindeer. These animals love to snack on Amanita muscaria, and here's the magic part. Their bodies process the mushroom, filtering out a lot of the toxins but keeping the hallucinogenic effects. When the reindeer pee, their urine is now laced with these psychoactive compounds, minus most of the bad stuff. The indigenous people figured this out a long time ago. Now, instead of chowing down on the mushrooms and risking a bad trip, they would drink the urine of the reindeer that had eaten the mushrooms. It might sound gross to us, but think about it, it's a pretty clever solution. This way they could safely get the psychoactive effects and use them in their shamanic rituals. Imagine a shaman drinking this reindeer urine and then embarking on a spiritual journey. They'd have vivid visions, feel a deep connection to the spirit world, and gain insights that they believed were crucial for their community. These experiences weren't just recreational, they were deeply spiritual and meaningful to them. But it didn't stop there either. People discovered that if someone drank the mushroom tea and then peed, others could drink their urine and experience the same effects. So, yeah. Alright, next up we got the idea that Santa was a shaman. So the idea that Santa Claus might be based on a psychedelic shaman is a pretty fascinating theory. So first off, we need to understand the figure of Santa Claus as we know him today. The jolly, red-suited, gift-giving man who flies with reindeer comes from a mix of various traditions, including the Dutch and the British, all layered on top of the historical Saint Nicholas, a 4th century Greek bishop known for his generosity. But here's where it gets interesting. Some people believe that Santa Claus has its roots in the shamanic traditions of the indigenous peoples of Siberia, particularly their use of the Amanita muscaria mushroom, the one that we were just talking about. So let's paint a picture. Imagine a Siberian shaman or a medicine man in his traditional garb. These shaman often wore red and white fur trimmed coats, similar to Santa's iconic outfit. In the dead of winter, they would go from yurt to yurt, bringing the gift of the Amanita muscaria mushroom, which was used in their rituals to induce altered states of consciousness. These mushrooms were believed to be a way to connect with the spirit world, bringing visions and guidance from beyond. The shamans would typically dry the mushrooms by hanging them in socks or stockings over the fire, a detail that might sound familiar. Now picture the reindeer again. In Siberian culture, the reindeer weren't just for transport. We just talked about they were often used to consume the psychedelic mushrooms. And also they would get the same effects, like the reindeer would prance about seemingly intoxicated. And then, you know, they're prancing about so much, looking like majestic, this would tie into the idea of Santa's flying reindeer. Moreover, these shamans often entered homes through the smoke hole in the roof, akin to Santa coming down the chimney. Given the harsh winter conditions, this was somewhat the easiest way to enter a dwelling, especially when snow blocked the door. So I don't know, you tell me, what do you guys think in the comments? You think Santa could have been based on one of these guys? Alright, next up we got Hawaiian baby woodrose. Hawaiian baby woodrose, or Argyria nervosa, is a flowering vine native to the Indian subcontinent, but it's also found in Hawaii and other tropical regions. The plant is part of the morning glow family and produces large, heart-shaped leaves and beautiful trumpet-shaped flowers. However, it's not the flowers that are of interest here, but the seeds. The seeds of Hawaiian baby woodrose contain a compound called LSA, which is chemically similar to LSD. This makes them a natural source of a powerful psychedelic, and they've been used for this purpose by various cultures. Historically, the seeds were used in traditional medicine and spiritual practices. In Hawaii, they were known for their entheogenic properties, meaning that they were used to induce spiritual or mystical experiences. Shamans and healers might have used them to enter altered states of consciousness, facilitating communication with the spirit world or providing visions and insights. In more recent times, especially in the 1960s and 1970s, Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds gained popularity among those interested in psychedelics. People looking for a natural alternative to LSD began experimenting with the seeds. They discovered that consuming them could produce effects similar to those of LSD, though often less intense and with a different character. To use the seeds, people typically scrape off the outer coating, which can contain irritating compounds, and then either chew the seeds or grind them up and mix them into a drink. The effects of LSA can vary widely depending on the dose, the individual's body chemistry, and the mental state of the person doing it. Generally, users report experiencing altered perceptions of reality, enhanced colors and patterns, and a sense of connection to the universe or nature. The trip can last anywhere between 6 to 8 hours and often includes both visual and mental effects. Some users report profound spiritual insights and feelings of euphoria, while others might experience nausea, anxiety, or confusion. Because of this variability, it's always recommended to start with a low dose to gauge how your body reacts. Now, legally, the status of Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds vary. In many places, the seeds themselves are legal to buy and possess, but extracting or consuming LSA from them might be considered illegal, as LSA is a controlled substance in several countries. Therefore, it's always a good idea to check your local regulations before experimenting with these seeds. Alright, next up we got the Johnny Appleseed of LSD. This refers to a man named William Leonard Pickard. Pickard is a prominent figure in the world of psychedelics because of his involvement in the large-scale production and distribution of LSD. So, William Leonard Pickard was born in 1945, and he showed early promise as an academic. He attended prestigious institutions like Princeton University and the University of California, Berkeley, where he studied under some of the leading minds at the time. His academic background was impressive, and he became known for his research on psychedelics and their potential therapeutic uses. Pickard's involvement in the LSD scene began in the late 20th century when he became part of a clandestine network of chemists and distributors. He was not just any producer, he was responsible for manufacturing enormous quantities of high-quality LSD. His operations were sophisticated and widespread, earning him a reputation similar to that of Johnny Appleseed, the American pioneer who spread apple trees across the United States. In Pickard's case, however, it was LSD that he was distributing. The scale of Pickard's LSD production was staggering. At his peak, he was allegedly responsible for producing up to 90% of the world's supply of LSD. His labs were hidden in remote locations, and he employed advanced chemical techniques to ensure the purity and potency of his product. The sheer volume of LSD that he produced had a pretty significant impact on the psychedelic scene, influencing countless users and contributing to the spread of the drug's use. However, Pickard's story took a dramatic turn in 2000 when he was arrested in a high-profile bust. The authorities discovered a massive LSD laboratory in a decommissioned missile silo in Kansas, leading to Pickard's arrest along with his accomplice Clyde Apperson. The bust was one of the largest in history, and Pickard was sentenced to 2 life terms in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Pickard's arrest and conviction marked a significant moment in the history of psychedelic drugs. His operations had been so extensive that his downfall created a noticeable shortage of LSD on the streets. That's crazy. This in turn had a ripple effect on the psychedelic community, leading to increased prices and a decline in the availability of the drug. Despite his imprisonment though, Pickard remains a pretty controversial figure. Like, supporters argued that his work in producing LSD was rooted in a desire to explore and expand human consciousness, aligning with the broader goals of the psychedelic movement. Critics, on the other hand, view him as a criminal who contributed to the illegal drug trade. So yeah. Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter Thompson was one of those larger-than-life characters who lived as wildly as he wrote. Born in 1937 in Louisville, Kentucky, he wasn't your typical journalist. Instead of just observing, he dove headfirst into the chaos, making himself a part of the story. This fearless approach birthed what we now call gonzo journalism, where the writer becomes the main character in their own narrative. Thompson's most famous work, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, is a perfect example of this. Imagine setting off on a road trip to Las Vegas with a trunk full of drugs and a friend who's just as crazy as you are. That's the basic setup of this book, which is a semi-autobiographical account of a drug-fueled journey to the heart of American excess. The story is wild, filled with vivid descriptions of hallucinations and bizarre encounters, all while trying to make sense of the American dream. The way Thompson wrote was anything but conventional. His style was manic and surreal, blending reality with his drug-induced experiences. This wasn't about being an objective reporter, it was about diving into the madness and writing from within it. He described tripping on LSD or mescaline with such vivid detail that you could almost feel the room spinning around you. It was raw, unfiltered, and totally unique. Beyond the madness of his stories, there was always a deeper critique of society. In Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, for example, beneath the crazy road trip lies a sharp commentary on the failure of the 1960s counterculture and like the dark side of the American dream. Thompson wasn't just getting high for the sake of it, he was exploring the depths of human experience and society's contradictions. Now, Thompson's influence also goes beyond just his books. He became like a cultural icon, known for his wild lifestyle that included everything from heavy drug use to run-ins with the law. He lived in Woody Creek, Colorado, in a fortified compound where he continued his wild antics and writing until his death in 2005. His persona was just as legendary as his writing. He was a rebel, a provocateur, and a fierce critic of the establishment. Next up, we got ibogaine. Ibogaine is one of those substances that kind of stands out in the world of psychedelics because it's not just about the trip, it's also about healing. Derived from the root bark of the Tabernanthe iboga plant, which is native to West Africa, ibogaine has been used for centuries in traditional ceremonies. These ceremonies are deeply spiritual, involving rituals that aim to connect participants with their ancestors and to the spiritual world. But what makes ibogaine particularly fascinating today is its potential to treat addiction. Imagine struggling with addiction, trying countless times to break free, but finding yourself trapped in this relentless cycle. This is where ibogaine comes in, offering help where there often seems to be none. People who have taken ibogaine describe it as a life-changing experience. It's not just a high, it's an intense journey inward. Users report profound visions and a deep sense of introspection, often confronting painful memories and emotions. The experience can be physically taxing, think nausea, vomiting, and intense fatigue, but many believe these challenges are part of the healing process. During the trip, which can last anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, users often feel like they're being guided by some kind of internal wisdom, helping them understand the root causes of their addiction. What's truly remarkable about ibogaine is its potential to reset the brain's chemistry. People report that after one intense session, their cravings for drugs like heroin or alcohol diminish significantly, sometimes disappearing entirely. It's as if ibogaine hits the reset button on their addiction, giving them a clean slate. Of course, ibogaine isn't a magic bullet, it's not a cure, but rather a powerful tool that can aid in the recovery process. After the initial experience, ongoing therapy and support are crucial to maintain sobriety. But also, this stuff is still illegal in a lot of countries, including the US. However, there are places in Mexico and Canada and some European countries where you can legally undergo ibogaine treatment. But again, I'm not condoning anything in this video, okay? Next up, we're going to talk about chakras. Chakras are a concept from ancient Indian traditions, specifically rooted in Hinduism and later adapted by various other spiritual practices, including Buddhism and New Age spirituality. The term chakra comes from the Sanskrit word for wheel or disc and refers to centers of energy within the human body. These energy centers are believed to be spinning wheels of light that correspond to different aspects of physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. There are 7 main chakras aligned with the spine, each associated with a specific physical and spiritual function or functions. So first, there's the root chakra. This is located at the base of the spine. The root chakra is associated with grounding, stability, and survival. Its color is red. When balanced, it provides a sense of security and connection to the physical world. An imbalance can lead to feelings of fear and insecurity. Next, we have the sacral chakra. Situated just below the navel, the sacral chakra is linked to creativity, sexuality, and emotions. Its color is orange. A balanced sacral chakra allows for healthy relationships, pleasure, and creativity. Imbalance might result in emotional instability or sexual dysfunction. And then thirdly, we have the solar plexus chakra. Located in the upper abdomen, the solar plexus chakra is the center of personal power, confidence, and self-esteem. Its color is yellow, and when in harmony, it fosters a sense of purpose and self-worth. Imbalance can cause issues with self-doubt and control. Fourth, we have the heart chakra. Found in the center of the chest, the heart chakra is associated with love, compassion, and forgiveness. Its color is green, and a balanced heart chakra promotes healthy relationships and emotional well-being. An imbalance can lead to feelings of loneliness and emotional pain. Fifth, we have the throat chakra, located at the throat. This chakra is linked to communication, truth, and self-expression. It's blue. Six, we have the third eye chakra. This one's positioned between the eyebrows and it's connected to intuition, insight, and spiritual awareness, and it's indigo. And then finally, the seventh one is called the crown chakra. It's located at the top of the head, and this chakra is the center of spiritual connection and enlightenment, and its color is either violet or white. But now, how are these chakras related to psychedelic drugs? Well, as we've talked about, many people report having profound spiritual awakenings while using psychedelics, which often include feelings of unity, interconnectedness, and enlightenment. These experiences align with the goals of balancing the crown chakra, which is associated with spiritual connection and enlightenment. Users may feel a direct connection to a higher power or a universal consciousness, similar to what's described in spiritual practices that involve chakras. Psychedelic experiences can also facilitate deep emotional release and healing by bringing repressed emotions and traumas to the surface. This process relates to the heart chakra, which governs love, compassion, and emotional well-being. Confronting these and releasing these emotions can lead to a more balanced heart chakra. So yeah, I could go through all these and explain how they might relate to psychedelics, but yeah, I mean, each chakra can just kind of, have its way of doing psychedelics can help balance it, at least in the right circumstance. Because we've talked about, in the first video, set and setting, like your mindset and where you are, like it can be a good trip or a bad trip, but even a bad trip might imbalance a chakra. So chakras could be, in that school of thought, be pretty attributed to psychedelic drugs. Next up, let's talk about hyperspace surgery. Hyperspace surgery is a term that emerges from the experiences of users taking powerful psychedelics like DMT. When people refer to hyperspace surgery, they're talking about a vivid, surreal experience that feels like an encounter with advanced, otherworldly entities performing some form of metaphysical or psychic operation on their consciousness. Imagine you take a hit of DMT, and within seconds, you're propelled into a completely different realm, often described as hyperspace. This place is filled with intensely bright colors, intricate geometric patterns, and entities that seem both alien and familiar. These beings, sometimes referred to as machine elves or hyperdimensional doctors, appear to be waiting for you, as if they've been expecting your arrival. Once in this state, users often report a sensation that these entities are working on them in some way. It's not a physical surgery, but it feels incredibly real. The beings might be rearranging your thoughts, healing your psyche, or imparting profound knowledge. People describe this process with a mixture of awe and reverence, noting that it often feels beneficial even if it's not fully understood. The surgery might involve a deep, intuitive feeling of being examined or adjusted. Some users report a sense of having parts of their consciousness removed, cleaned, and replaced. Others describe it as a download of information or an upgrade to their mental and spiritual faculties. The experience is often accompanied by a feeling of being profoundly loved and cared for by these entities, as though they're benevolent doctors ensuring your well-being. I'm real or no one is real. Feeling that I'm not real or no one is real can be quite disorienting, and it's a notion that often surfaces during or after intense psychedelic experiences. These thoughts are linked to the concept of solipsism, which questions the reality of anything outside of one's own mind. Psychedelics can amplify this by breaking down the usual boundaries of perception and self, leading to profound feelings of detachment or oneness with everything. When under the influence of psychedelics, people often experience a dissolution of the ego, the part of the mind that maintains the boundary between the self and the external world. This ego dissolution can lead to a sense of unity with the universe, but it can also provoke existential questions. You might start wondering if your reality is just a construct of your mind, and if anything or anyone outside your own consciousness is real. This experience can be both liberating and frightening. So, on one hand, it can give you a deep sense of connection to the universe, a feeling that you're part of a greater whole. On the other hand, though, it can be unsettling, making you question the nature of existence and reality. These experiences can lead to profound insights, but they can also cause confusion and distress if not integrated properly. Now, this feeling especially comes out during drugs like ketamine and DXM. These are drugs known as dissociatives. So DXM, found in cough syrups, can create a sensation of floating outside one's body or existing in an entirely different realm. High doses can lead to profound detachment from reality, where the boundaries between self and the environment kind of blur, which lead to thoughts about the unreality of existence. Ketamine, often used as an anesthetic, is another powerful dissociative. It can produce what is known as a K-hole, a state where users feel completely separated from their physical bodies, and may experience intense hallucinations and altered perceptions of time and space. During a K-hole, users might feel like they're traveling through different dimensions or that their sense of self has dissolved entirely, leading to existential reflections on the nature of reality and existence. Hyperspace lexicon is a fascinating concept often discussed by those who have ventured into the realms of intense psychedelic experiences, particularly with substances like DMT. We already talked about hyperspace a little bit. It's just a realm that's characterized by vivid hyperdimensional landscapes filled with intricate patterns, bright colors, and often inhabited by seemingly intelligent entities. The term hyperspace lexicon itself implies a kind of language or set of symbols unique to this dimension. Users often describe encountering complex geometric shapes and symbols that seem to carry deep meaning, although they are beyond the understanding of normal linguistic frameworks. These symbols might appear as part of the environment or be communicated by the entities inhabiting hyperspace. The entities encountered in hyperspace are frequently described as highly intelligent beings that communicate through telepathy or these visual symbols. They're often called machine elves or hyperdimensional beings and are said to possess a playful and profound demeanor. But we already kind of talked about hyperspace, so I'm going to move on. Betty Eisner. Betty Eisner was a pioneering psychologist who played a significant role in early psychedelic research. She worked closely with Dr. Sidney Cohen in the 1950s and 60s, exploring the therapeutic potentials of substances like LSD and psilocybin. Eisner believed that psychedelics could help patients achieve breakthroughs in therapy by breaking down barriers to their unconscious minds. Eisner's approach was holistic, incorporating not just the drug sessions, but also extensive preparatory and follow-up work. She emphasized the importance of set and setting, ensuring that the environment was conducive to therapeutic breakthroughs. Her patients often experienced profound insights and emotional releases, which she believed were crucial for healing. Despite the promising results, her work, like that of many psychedelic researchers at the time, faced significant pushback during the 60s as the political climate around these substances changed. But, O.N. Ulrich, O.T. Oss. O.N. Ulrich and O.T. Oss are the pseudonyms of Terence McKenna and his brother Dennis McKenna, two influential figures in the field of psychedelic studies. They co-authored the book Psilocybin Magic Mushrooms Grower Guide in the late 70s, which became a seminal work in the DIY cultivation of psilocybin mushrooms. Terence McKenna, a philosopher and ethobotanist, and Dennis, a research pharmacologist, used these pseudonyms to protect their identities while promoting the therapeutic and consciousness-expanding potential of psychedelics, particularly psilocybin mushrooms. And their work did significantly influence the psychedelic movement and the study of entheogens. Next up, we have Kambo. Kambo is a traditional medicine used by various indigenous tribes in the Amazon rainforest. It involves applying the secretion of the giant monkey frog to small burns on the skin. This practice is believed to cleanse the body, mind, and spirit, and is used to treat various physical ailments, increase stamina, and improve mood. The secretion contains a complex mix of bioactive peptides that have powerful physiological effects, including purging toxins, boosting the immune system, and enhancing mental clarity. The process of a Kambo ceremony typically begins with a shaman or a practitioner making small burns on the participant's skin, usually on the arm or leg. The frog's secretion is then applied to these burns, allowing it to enter the lymphatic system. Almost immediately, the participant experiences intense physical reactions such as vomiting, sweating, and rapid heartbeat, which are seen as part of the detoxification process. People who undergo Kambo treatments often report a range of benefits, including the heightened senses, increased energy, and emotional release. However, it's important to know that Kambo is a powerful substance and can be risky, especially for those with certain medical conditions. It's crucial to have the ceremony conducted by an experienced practitioner who can manage the intense effects and ensure the safety of the participant. Next up, we got holotropic breathwork. Holotropic breathwork is a powerful therapeutic technique developed by Stanislav Grof and his wife, Christina Grof, in the 1970s. It uses accelerated breathing patterns and evocative music to induce altered states of consciousness, similar to those experienced with psychedelics. The process aims to facilitate deep emotional and psychological healing. During a holotropic breathwork session, participants lie down and breathe rapidly and deeply while listening to music designed to evoke a range of emotions. This intensive breathing can lead to a non-ordinary state of consciousness where participants might experience vivid imagery, emotional breakthroughs, and profound insights. The session is usually followed by a period of integration where participants reflect on their experiences through art, journaling, or group discussions. Holotropic breathwork is based on the idea that these altered states can help access and process repressed emotions, memories, and traumas. It's often used as a tool for personal growth, spiritual exploration, and healing. It's pretty cool. Alright, next up we got the Marsh Chapel Experiment. The Marsh Chapel Experiment, also known as the Good Friday Experiment, was a groundbreaking study conducted in 1962 by Walter Pank, a Harvard Divinity School student, under the supervision of Timothy Leary, who we talked about him like a bunch in the first video. The experiment aimed to investigate the potential of psilocybin, a psychedelic compound in mushrooms. 20 theology students participated, half receiving psilocybin and the other half receiving a placebo. The setting was a Good Friday service at Marsh Chapel at Boston University, designed to provide a conducive environment for spiritual experiences. The results were striking. Those who took psilocybin reported profound, life-changing mystical experiences characterized by a sense of unity, transcendence, and deep spiritual insight. Many experienced feeling an overwhelming sense of connection to a higher power and a loss of ego. The placebo group, in contrast, did not report similar experiences, highlighting the powerful impact of psilocybin. Now, the Marsh Chapel experiment was special because it was one of the first scientific studies to investigate the potential of psychedelics to induce mystical experiences. And it was also like different because it was in like a religious context where they were all like religious people in a church. Now next we got the Dom/STP panic. This refers to a series of alarming incidents that took place in the late 1960s involving the psychedelic drug STP, also known as Dom. Developed by Alexander Shulgin, this powerful hallucinogenic was significantly more potent and longer lasting than LSD. In 1967, it was distributed at the Summer of Love in San Francisco without proper information about its potency or duration, leading to widespread panic and hospitalizations. People who took STP were unprepared for its intense and prolonged effects, which could last up to 24 hours or more. Many users experienced overwhelming hallucinations, severe anxiety, and a sense of losing control, prompting emergency medical interventions. The media dubbed it the STP panic. So yeah, that'd be kind of scary. I mean, imagine you just don't know what you're getting and you get a drug that's stronger than LSD and it can last up to 24 hours. That's crazy. All right, next up, we're going to talk about Ezekiel 1 and 10. So diving into the vivid and complex visions described in Ezekiel 1 and 10, it's fascinating to consider whether these accounts could be akin to experiences described by modern users of psychedelic drugs. Ezekiel's descriptions of seeing 4 living creatures with multiple faces and wings, surrounded by wheels within wheels full of eyes, strike a chord with the surreal and intricate hallucinations reported by users of substances like LSD, psilocybin, and especially DMT. The entities encountered during such psychedelic trips often appear as otherworldly and imbued with a sense of profound meaning or divinity, much like the biblically accurate angels Ezekiel describes, which are far more alien in appearance than the human-like angels commonly depicted in later Christian iconography. You know, like the babies with wings and stuff. This overlap leads to intriguing possibilities, like could the prophetic visions in religious texts such as the Book of Ezekiel have been influenced by naturally occurring or ingested substances that were capable of inducing altered states of consciousness. In many ancient cultures, substances that altered perception were not only known, but were also used ceremonially to gain insight or spiritual experiences that we've already talked about a lot. While there's no direct evidence to suggest that Ezekiel used such substances, the parallels between his visions and those experienced under the influence of psychedelic drugs, remember especially DMT, are pretty compelling. They both share a profound transformative visual and emotional impact, often coupled with a sense of encountering the divine or the utterly unfathomable. And with that, we're done with that layer. Let's get into this next layer. We have 3 left now. Okay, so we're going to talk about how MDMA was called Adam. So MDMA was first synthesized in 1912, but it didn't make much of a splash until the 1970s, when a few forward-thinking psychotherapists started experimenting with it in their sessions. They found that it had a remarkable ability to help patients lower their emotional defenses and communicate more openly. It was like it helped them cut through their own inner noise and really connect with their feelings and the person sitting across from them. This was a game changer in therapy, where getting to the emotional truth quickly can sometimes take months or even years. The therapists who use MDMA believed that it was not just another drug, it was a tool for deep, meaningful healing. So because of this, they called it Adam, referencing the biblical figure who represents humanity in its most natural and uncorrupted state. The idea was that MDMA could help bring people back to their emotional baseline, free from the social masks and walls we build up over time. This therapeutic use of MDMA was quite groundbreaking, and there was a strong belief among these early users that it could revolutionize psychotherapy. They documented cases where MDMA sessions led to breakthroughs for patients who have been stuck for a long time, particularly those dealing with PTSD, anxiety, and interpersonal issues. However, by the mid-1980s, MDMA began to escape the clinic and seep into the broader culture. It started showing up in bars, nightclubs, and at raves. The setting and intentions behind its use shifted dramatically from a controlled, therapeutic environment aimed at emotional exploration to festive, recreational settings where the goal was more about euphoria and social connection. As this shift occurred, the name ecstasy emerged and stuck. This name captured the joyful, euphoric highs people felt dancing and mingling under its influence, which was a stark contrast to the introspective, therapeutic sessions facilitated by Adam. So yeah, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. Alright, now we're going to talk about Santo Daime. Santo Daime is a spiritual movement that began in the 1930s Amazon rainforest. It was founded by Raimundo Eniro Serra, who was influenced by indigenous Amazonian beliefs, African animism, and Christian mysticism. And this rich blend makes Santo Daime truly unique. The core of Santo Daime's practice involves the ceremonial use of ayahuasca, a psychoactive brew. Ayahuasca is made from a special kind of vine and the leaves of a special kind of shrub. This combination makes a pretty powerful psychedelic experience, which members of Santo Daime use as a sacrament, believing that it connects them with the divine. What's particularly interesting about Santo Daime is how they integrate these intense spiritual experiences with a structured set of rituals and hymns, which are said to guide the psychedelic journey, ensuring that it remains spiritual and healing and not just, a psychedelic trip. These ceremonies can last for several hours and they're filled with music, dancing, and prayer. Now, in Santo Daime ceremonies, participants often share stories of meeting the Queen of the Forest, a spiritual entity considered to be a guardian of the Amazon and a central figure in many of their visions. This being is described as a motherly figure who imparts wisdom and offers protection. The encounter can feel incredibly real and profoundly moving, with the queen sometimes giving specific advice on personal or community issues. Another eerie element reported by participants is the phenomenon of physically experiencing the sensations of other life forms, like plants or animals, during a ceremony. Some describe feeling as though they are undergoing transformations, gaining insight into the non-human perspectives of the natural world around them. This deep, empathetic connection can be both enlightening and unsettling, though, because it can kind of do the same thing like dissociatives do, where it dissolves the usual boundaries between yourself and the other. And in these experiences, combined with the setting, which is usually a dimly lit room or a secluded spot in the forest, and the collective energy of a group intensely focused on spiritual exploration, create a palpable atmosphere. But it seems kind of scary, bro. I'm not gonna lie. It seems kind of scary. Phalaris grasses. Phalaris grasses, also known as canary grasses, are a group of grass species within the genus Phalaris. These grasses are known for their hardiness and adaptability, making them prevalent in various environments from wetlands to gardens, and even as invasive species in some regions. Among the different types, Phalaris arundinacea and Phalaris aquatica are the most recognized. These are reed canary grass and aquatic canary grass. These species are often used in agriculture as fodder because they grow quickly and are resilient to many conditions. One of the intriguing aspects of Phalaris grasses is their biochemical makeup, particularly their role in entheogenic practices due to their presence of DMT. This has garnered a lot of interest from those exploring natural sources of DMT for use in preparations or for other psychonautic explorations. However, extracting DMT from these grasses is very complex and can be very illegal. And it also depends on the species, growth conditions, and time of harvest. And despite their potential in psychedelic research, Phalaris grasses also pose challenges. For instance, Phalaris arundinacea has become an ecological concern in some regions as it can dominate wetlands and displace native species. Managing these grasses in wild and agricultural settings requires a lot of careful consideration of both their utility and their invasive potential, so, gotta be careful with those. Alright, next up we have the story that Nixon was almost dosed. There's an intriguing anecdote from the counterculture era involving President Richard Nixon and the infamous Merry Pranksters, a group known for their widespread promotion of psychedelic drugs, most notably LSD, under the leadership of figures like Ken Casey. According to Tom Wolfe in his book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, which chronicles the adventures of the Merry Pranksters, there was a plan to dose Richard Nixon with LSD. The story goes that Ken Casey and the Merry Pranksters considered slipping LSD into Nixon's drink during a party that was both attended by Nixon and where Casey was present. The pranksters were known for their acid tests, events where LSD-laced drinks were distributed freely, and they saw it as a form of social experimentation and a way to expand consciousness. However, Nixon was notoriously cautious and known for his controlled public appearances, making it extremely unlikely that he would consume anything that could have been tampered with. The plan, whether seriously intended or just a part of the pranksters' lore, never came to fruition. Nixon, for his part, went on to become one of the most ardent opponents of the drug culture, spearheading initiatives that led to the war on drugs and stuff. But I don't know, I mean, it could have happened. Who knows, right? Next up, we have Quanah Parker. Quanah Parker is a fascinating figure in American history. So, born around 1845 or 1852, we don't really know, Quanah was the son of Cynthia Ann Parker, a white settler who was captured by the Comanche and integrated into their tribe. His heritage made him a living symbol of the cultural fusion and tensions of his time. Quanah's early life was marked by the harsh realities of frontier conflicts. After the Texas Rangers attacked his tribe's camp in the Battle of Peace River in 1860, his mother was recaptured and returned to her white family, but she never truly readjusted to life outside the Comanche community and died in deep sadness, longing for her life with the Comanche. Quanah rose to prominence during a period of significant resistance by the Plains tribes against the encroachment of settlers and the military. He became a formidable war leader, particularly noted for his participation in the fierce resistance during the Red River War. This series of battles in 1874 was crucial in the history of the Plains War, representing the desperate, yet ultimately doomed effort by the Comanche and other tribes to preserve their lands and way of life. So after the tumultuous Red River War and his subsequent transition to reservation life, Quanah Parker became a pivotal role in the adoption and spread of the Native American church movement among the Plains tribes, including the Comanche. This religious movement integrated the use of peyote in its ceremonies, which was, and still is, considered a sacrament capable of healing the body and the soul, providing visions and spiritual insight. Peyote ceremonies typically involve an all-night session of prayer, singing, and the ingestion of peyote, leading to introspective and often visionary experiences. These experiences are viewed as a way of communicating with the spirit world, seeking guidance and fostering community and understanding among participants. Quanah's embrace of peyote ritual was not only a spiritual choice, but also a strategic one, as it offered a means of cultural preservation and resilience in the face of an overwhelming cultural and physical displacement. Now, Quanah advocated for peyote because he believed in its therapeutic benefits, both spiritual and physical. He argued that it was a way to combat the despair and dislocation felt by his people under the pressure of reservation life. His leadership helped to formalize the use of peyote into a structured religious framework, which was crucial in its legal defense. The Native American Church, with peyote at its sacramental core, eventually gained legal protections in the United States, despite the broader American legal system's harsh stance against other psychedelic substances. Alright, now we're going to talk about how Joseph Smith might have done psychedelics. So there's a fascinating theory out there that Joseph Smith, the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, might have used psychedelics. It sounds pretty wild, but let's dive into it a bit. Some researchers suggest that Smith's visionary experiences, like the ones that led to the creation of the Book of Mormon, could have been influenced by entheogens, substances that induce spiritual or mystical experiences. So the speculation is based on a few key points. First, the 19th century America that Joseph Smith lived in was a place where folk medicine and natural remedies were widely used. People often if you can hear my phone, like my phone falling in the recording, you can just like bleep that and leave it in, and like that's kind of goofy, right, guys? That's kind of goofy. I'm talking to my editor now. Anyways, first, the 19th century America that Joseph Smith lived in was a place where folk medicines and natural remedies were widely used. People often turn to plants and fungi with psychoactive properties for various purposes, including spiritual insight. There's some evidence suggesting that Smith and those close to him might have had access to these substances. For instance, certain types of mushrooms, cacti, and even toads contain powerful psychoactive compounds. These natural psychedelics were known to indigenous people and were sometimes used in rituals. So the theory goes that Smith could have incorporated these into his own spiritual practices, intentionally or otherwise, which might explain the vivid and detailed nature of his visions. One of the most compelling arguments comes from comparing Smith's experiences to known effects of psychedelics. His visions often included profound encounters with otherworldly beings and divine revelations, similar to the kind of experiences that people report after using substances like psilocybin mushrooms. The sense of awe, the vivid imagery, and the profound insights are all a hallmark of a psychedelic experience. Of course, this idea is still pretty controversial and isn't widely universally accepted by scholars. There's no direct historical evidence that Smith used psychedelics, no journal entries or letters explicitly stating it. Most of the evidence is circumstantial, but it's an intriguing point though. If Joseph Smith did use entheogenics, it would place him in a long tradition of religious figures who would have used natural substances to experience this, spiritual enlightenment. Alright, now we're gonna talk about DMT at birth and death. The idea that DMT might play a role in the experiences surrounding birth and death is a topic that straddles the line between fascinating science and speculative theory. DMT is a powerful psychedelic compound, we've already talked about it a bunch. But here's the thing, it's also produced in small amounts in the human body naturally, particularly in the pineal gland, though this is still a topic of ongoing research. Some researchers and theorists propose that DMT could be released in significant amounts during critical moments of human life, such as birth and death. This idea stems partly from the nature of DMT experiences, which often include intense, vivid visions, feelings of transcending time and space, and encounters with otherworldly entities or realms. These experiences can feel profoundly significant and often carry themes of rebirth, death, and the journey of the soul. At birth, the theory suggests that the release of DMT could help infants transition into consciousness, aiding the brain in adapting to the overwhelming influx of sensory information outside the womb. This might explain why newborns appear to be in kind of like a dreamlike state, gradually acclimating to their environment. As for death, the idea is that a surge of DMT might occur as the brain experiences the stress and transition of dying. This could potentially account for the common elements of near-death experiences reported by many people, which is like seeing bright lights, experiencing a life review, encountering deceased loved ones, and a feeling of peace or even euphoria. These experiences are similar to those induced by DMT, leading some to hypothesize that the body's natural production of the compound might provide a sort of biochemical passageway, easing the transition from life to whatever lies beyond. However, I know I don't want to be a loser, but it is important to know that this theory, while captivating, is still speculative. The scientific community has not conclusively proven that DMT is released in large quantities at birth or death. The logistics of measuring such release in real time are incredibly challenging, and ethical considerations further complicate research in this area, so maybe one day we'll know. Alright, next we're going to talk about alien information theory. Alien information theory is a fascinating concept introduced by Dr. Andrew Gallimore, a computational neurobiologist and pharmacologist, in his book, Alien Information Theory, Psychedelic Drug Technologies in the Cosmic Game. This theory delves into the nature of reality, consciousness, and the profound experiences induced by powerful psychedelics such as DMT. So, Gallimore's central thesis is that reality as we perceive it is a form of information processing. Our brain acts as biological computers, decoding a complex stream of data into the rich sensory experience that we call life. According to Gallimore, psychedelics like DMT can temporarily disrupt this process, allowing us to perceive different layers of reality or alternate modes of information processing that are usually hidden from our everyday consciousness. One of the most intriguing aspects of alien information theory is the idea that the intense, often otherworldly experiences induced by DMT might actually be glimpses into these alternative realities. Users of DMT frequently report encountering highly intelligent autonomous entities in these altered states, beings that seem to exist in a realm fundamentally different from our own. Gallimore suggests that these entities could be real, existing in a parallel layer of information space, and that DMT acts as kind of a reality switch, tuning our perception to this other layer. This theory challenges our traditional understanding of consciousness and reality. It implies that our everyday reality is just one of many possible realities, each structured by different rules of information processing. DMT, by altering the brain's decoding mechanisms, allows us to experience these alternative realities, which might explain why the experiences are so vivid, consistent, and shared among users despite cultural or personal differences. Gallimore's theory also touches on the notion of the cosmic game, where reality is seen as a vast, complex game of information exchange. In this game, consciousness plays a central role, acting as both the player and the processor of information. Psychedelics then are tools that can help us understand and navigate this game, providing insights into the deeper structures and rules that govern our existence. Alright, next we're going to talk about the League of Spiritual Discovery. The League for Spiritual Discovery, or LSD, LSD was a spiritual organization founded by Timothy Leary in the 1960s, who we already talked about a lot, but in case you forgot, he's a former Harvard psychologist turned counterculture icon, and he became one of the most prominent advocates for the use of psychedelics, particularly LSD, as a means to expand consciousness and achieve spiritual enlightenment. Leary's journey into the world of psychedelics began with his work at Harvard University, where he and a fellow psychologist, Richard Alpert, later known as Ram Dass, conducted experiments with psilocybin mushrooms. These experiments, though controversial, convinced Leary of the profound potential of psychedelics to transform human consciousness. When LSD became more widely available, Leary saw it as the next step in this transformative process. The League for Spiritual Discovery was essentially a way to provide a religious and legal framework for the use of LSD, aligning it with the First Amendment's protection of religious freedom. Leary envisioned the League as a new kind of religion, one that used psychedelics as sacraments to explore and expand the human mind. The League's motto, turn on, tune in, drop out, encapsulated Leary's vision for a society where individuals could transcend their ordinary states of consciousness and connect with deeper spiritual truths. Members of the League for Spiritual Discovery would gather for communal experiences, often involving the use of LSD in a guided, intentional manner. These sessions were designed to be more than just recreational. They were seen as spiritual journeys aimed at achieving personal growth, insight, and a greater connection to the universe. Leary's efforts with the League were part of a broader movement during the 1960s that saw psychedelics as tools for societal change. This movement believed that by altering individual consciousness, it was possible to change societal structures and promote peace, love, and understanding. However, the widespread and unregulated use of psychedelics also led to a backlash, resulting in the criminalization of LSD and other similar substances by the end of the decade. Despite its relatively short lifespan, the League for Spiritual Discovery left a pretty lasting impact on the culture of the 60s and the ongoing conversation about the role of psychedelics today, so it was pretty important. Alright. This one stuck out to me whenever I was looking this Iceberg. This one is Psychedelics Lab in Volcano. So the idea of a psychedelics lab in a volcano sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel or a either really bad or really old video game. But it's based on a real and intriguing story. So in the early 1960s, a group of dedicated scientists, including renowned chemist Albert Hofmann, the discoverer of LSD, established an actual secret laboratory within a volcano in Mexico. This lab was set up to study and synthesize psychedelics, away from the prying eyes of authorities and amid the unique, inspiring environment. The volcano in question is Popocatépetl. Wait, let me Google this pronunciation, guys. Hold on. Popocatépetl. Yeah, that's what it's called. Anyways, that's one of Mexico's most famous volcanoes. The remote and rugged terrain provided a pretty ideal clandestine location where the scientists could conduct their research without interference. The lab was reportedly housed within the caldera, utilizing the natural formations of the volcano to create a hidden, secure place for their work. The team at this makeshift lab focused on various psychedelic substances, including LSD and psilocybin. Their goal was to better understand these substances and their effects on human consciousness. This was a time of great interest and optimism about the potential of psychedelics to unlock new realms of human experience and to treat various mental health conditions. This secret lab contributed to a body of knowledge that would eventually influence the broader psychedelic movement of the 1960s and beyond. However, as government crackdowns on psychedelic research intensified, the operation was eventually shut down. The story of the Volcano Lab remains a pretty fascinating chapter in this history of psychedelic science. It's pretty crazy. Next up, we have Immortality Key. The Immortality Key, the secret history of the religion with no name, written by Brian C. Marikowski, is a fascinating exploration into the potential connections within ancient religious rituals and the use of psychedelics. The book delves into historical, archaeological, and scientific evidence to suggest that some of the earliest religious experiences may have been influenced by entheogenic substances. So it begins with the ancient Greeks and the Eleusinian mysteries, which we already kind of talked about a little bit. These rites, which lasted for over 2 millennia, are believed to have involved a mysterious potion called Kyokien, and the author of the book posits that Kyokien might have contained ergot, a fungus that grows on barley and is known to contain compounds related to LSD. The book then explores how these ancient traditions may have influenced early Christianity. The author investigates early Christian texts, art, and archaeological findings to propose that early Christians might have used psychedelic sacraments as part of their religious practices. This theory challenges the more conventional understanding of early Christian rituals and suggests that the transformative experiences described in religious texts could have been facilitated by psychoactive substances. The author's research also touches on the role of women in these ancient traditions. He highlights how women, often as priestesses or shamans, were key figures in the preparation and administration of these sacred substances. This aspect of his investigation sheds light on the often overlooked contributions of women to early religious practices and the preservation of these esoteric traditions. The immortality's key, though, isn't without controversy. Some scholars and historians are pretty skeptical of his conclusions, arguing that while the use of psychedelics in ancient rituals is plausible, definitive evidence still remains pretty elusive. However, the book has sparked renewed interest and debate in the field of ancient history and religious studies, so it encourages further exploration, which is always a great thing. At least we're talking about it. Alright guys, and with that, we're gonna move on into the last layer. Now, I want to be open with you guys, I don't know if you noticed, but I've not been covering every single entry. This iceberg is just huge and it would take forever and probably be boring for both of us, but I'll leave a link to this iceberg in the description if you want to go out and check it. I actually had someone put a link for every single thing in here, so if you want to go research further yourself on things I didn't cover, feel free to go do that in the description. Yeah, I just want to be open with you guys about that. But yeah, let's get into this. So first of all, we're gonna talk about mushroom caves. La Cave des Roches, also known as the Mushroom Caves, is a fascinating underground labyrinth located in the Loire Valley of France. This unique site, carved out of the soft tufa limestone, has been utilized for various purposes over the centuries, but today it is primarily known for its role in cultivating mushrooms. The caves have a history dating back to the Middle Ages when the stone was quarried for building materials. The extensive network of tunnels left behind provided the perfect environment for growing mushrooms. Like, the constant temperature and high humidity levels in the caves create ideal conditions for mushroom cultivation, allowing for year-round production without the need for any artificial climate control. So yeah, I guess this is here because you could grow psychedelic mushrooms here, but they don't. So I don't know why it's here, because they don't grow psychedelic mushrooms here. Alright, next up we have K-hole. A K-hole is a term used to describe a specific type of intense, often disorienting experience that can occur after taking a high dose of ketamine. Now again, ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic that has gained popularity both as a recreational drug and in medical settings because of its anesthetic and rapidly acting antidepressant properties. When someone enters a K-hole, they may feel detached from their body and surroundings, experiencing a profound sense of dissociation. This state can include a range of effects such as feeling like they're floating, having out-of-body experiences, or even perceiving themselves in different realities entirely. Time might feel distorted, with minutes stretching into what feels like hours. This can be disorienting and sometimes unsettling, especially for those who are not expecting such a powerful effect. The sensation of being in a K-hole is often compared to entering a deeply immersive, dream-like state. Users may feel like they're unable to move or communicate effectively, which can be frightening if they're unprepared for it. However, some people seek out the K-hole experience for its intense, introspective, and sometimes spiritually enlightening qualities. It can be a way to explore the depths of their consciousness, similar to the goals of using other psychedelics. But also, obviously, ketamine is not a good thing to do under any circumstance, so don't do it. Despite its recreational use, ketamine is a powerful drug that carries risks, especially at high doses. The dissociation and altered perception experience in a K-hole can lead to dangerous situations if users aren't safe, or if they're not in a safe environment, or if they attempt to perform tasks requiring coordination and judgment, such as, you guessed it, driving. Interestingly, in recent years though, ketamine has been studied for its rapid antidepressant effects. Low doses of ketamine administered in a controlled medical setting have been shown to alleviate symptoms of severe depression, often within hours. This has sparked a new wave of interest in the potential therapeutic uses for ketamine, far removed from its reputation as a club drug, but don't do it. Don't do ketamine. It's very bad and it's really addictive and it's not a good idea, okay? Alright, let's talk about hallucinogenic fish. Hallucinogenic fish might sound like something out of a tall tale, but there are indeed species of fish that can induce hallucinations when consumed. These fish, often referred to as dream fish, have a storied place in folklore and history, particularly in certain parts of the world. One of the most famous of these hallucinogenic fish is the Sarpa salpa, also known as the Salima porgi. Found in the Mediterranean and along the coast of Africa, the seemingly ordinary fish can cause vivid hallucinations if consumed. Historical accounts suggest that the Roman Empire was aware of its psychoactive properties and it was sometimes consumed for these effects. The hallucinogenic properties of the Sarpa salpa are known to be due to the certain toxins present in the fish's body, possibly acquired through its diet, which includes a variety of algae and plankton. These toxins can affect the human brain in ways that lead to intense visual and auditory hallucinations, often lasting for several hours. Symptoms reported by those who have unintentionally consumed the fish include terrifying and vivid hallucinations, which can be quite disorienting. In addition to Sarpa salpa, there are other species of fish known for their hallucinogenic effects as well. Another example is a certain type of mullet, which have been reported to cause similar psychedelic experiences when consumed. The exact cause of these effects is less well documented, but it's likely related to the fish's diet and the specific toxins that they accumulate. Interestingly, the phenomenon of hallucinogenic fish isn't limited to a single culture, though. Similar stories and experiences have been documented in various parts of the world, so maybe it's a lot more widespread than we kind of know. Alright, this one's gonna be interesting and bad. Let's talk about the family. The 1960s were a wild time for counterculture, and among the most bizarre of these movements was the Australian cult known as the Family. Led by the enigmatic Anne Hamilton Byrne, this group combined elements of LSD, yoga, and UFO beliefs into a strange and ultimately dark chapter of modern history. Anne Hamilton Byrne presented herself as a charismatic yoga teacher and spiritual leader. She founded the Family in the mid-1960s in Melbourne, attracting followers who were drawn to her teachings that blended Eastern spirituality, particularly yoga, with Western esoteric beliefs. At the core of her doctrine was the idea that she was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ and a divine being who could lead her followers to spiritual salvation. One of the most unsettling aspects of the Family was its use of LSD. Anne believed that the psychedelic experiences induced by LSD could bring her followers closer to spiritual enlightenment. She administered the drug during initiation rituals and other ceremonies, often in combination with her intense, trance-inducing yoga sessions. These psychedelic experiences were intended to break down the ego and open the mind to her teachings, reinforcing her control over the group. The Family's beliefs also included a fascination with UFOs. Hamilton Byrne taught that extraterrestrial beings played a role in human evolution, and that she and her followers were chosen to prepare for an impending apocalypse that would be marked by the arrival of these beings. This belief in UFOs added an otherworldly dimension to the already eclectic mix of doctrines, and helped to create a sense of urgency and exclusivity within the group. However, beneath the surface of spiritual exploration and cosmic salvation, there was a much darker side to the Family. Anne Hamilton Byrne orchestrated the illegal adoption of numerous children, raising them in isolated conditions and subjecting them to severe physical and emotional abuse. The children were often drugged with LSD and other substances, indoctrinated with the group's beliefs, and kept in line with strict and cruel discipline. The group's activities largely continued unnoticed until the late 1980s, when a police investigation and subsequent raid brought their practices to light. The revelations shocked the public and led to Anne Hamilton Byrne and several of her followers facing legal action, thank God. Although she was eventually convicted of minor offenses related to the fraudulent adoption practices, many felt that justice wasn't fully served given the extent of the abuse. It's heartbreaking. Okay, next one is a touchy subject, so let's talk about psychedelics and sexual abuse. Psychedelic therapy is gaining traction as a promising treatment for various mental health conditions. It involves the use of substances like psilocybin, MDMA, and LSD, and controlled substances to help patients access and process deep-seated emotions and traumas. This therapeutic potential is immense, with many patients experiencing good breakthroughs, whatever. However, as with any powerful tool, there's a darker side to psychedelic therapy that warrants serious attention. A concerning issue that's been emerging is the potential for sexual abuse by therapists. The risk stems from the deeply vulnerable state that patients enter during psychedelic sessions. These substances can dismantle mental barriers, leaving patients extremely open and susceptible to suggestion and manipulation. A CBC News article highlights a harrowing case in British Columbia where a former patient reported sexual abuse during her psychedelic therapy sessions. The patient, who was seeking help for past trauma, found herself in an even more distressing situation. The therapist, who was supposed to guide her through her healing journey, instead exploited her vulnerability. This story underscores the critical importance of rigorous standards and oversight in the field of psychedelic therapy. Unlike more established medical treatment, psychedelic therapy is still navigating its regulatory path. This gray area can attract practitioners who might not have the necessary training or ethical grounding, which increases the risk of misconduct. For patients, the experience of psychedelic therapy can be intensely emotional and disorienting. They place immense trust in their therapists, who hold significant power in guiding and safeguarding their journey. When this trust is breached, the emotional and psychological fallout can be devastating, compounding the very traumas that they came to therapy for. So I think it's crucial for the psychedelic therapy community to address these risks head on. This means advocating for comprehensive training for therapists, establishing clear ethical guidelines, and creating robust reporting and accountability mechanisms. Patients should also be empowered with knowledge about their rights and the signs of inappropriate behavior. But moving on from that, let's talk about microdosing causes myocarditis. Microdosing, the practice of taking small, sub-hallucinogenic doses of psychedelic substances, has gained popularity for its purported benefits like enhanced creativity, improved mood, and increased focus. People microdose with substances like LSD and psilocybin mushrooms, often taking these tiny doses a few times a week. While the practice is seen as a way to gain some of the benefits of psychedelics without the intense trips, recent discussions have raised concern about its safety, particularly regarding heart health. One significant concern is the potential link between microdosing and myocarditis, an inflammation of the heart muscle. A post on the Harvard Law Forum blog delves into this issue, highlighting the need for more research and caution in the practice of microdosing. Myocarditis can be caused by various factors, including viral infections and autoimmune diseases, but drug-induced myocarditis is known as like its own phenomenon. Psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin interact with serotonin receptors in the brain, but they also affect serotonin receptors in the heart. This intersection can potentially lead to adverse cardiovascular effects, especially when these substances are used frequently over time, as is common in microdosing regimens. The blog post emphasizes that while there are many anecdotal reports of the benefits of microdosing, the scientific community still lacks comprehensive studies on its long-term effects, particularly on heart health. Most existing research on psychedelics has focused on their use in larger doses for therapeutic sessions, not on the smaller doses typical of microdosing. This gap in research means that potential risks, like myocarditis, may not be fully understood or appreciated by those who choose to microdose. For individuals considering or currently practicing microdosing, it's crucial to be aware of these, regular medical checkups, monitoring heart health, etc. But again, I'm not advocating any use of any of these drugs at all, okay? Okay, let's talk about how LSD influenced the discovery of DNA. The story of LSD's influence on the discovery of DNA is one of the more intriguing intersections of science and psychedelics. According to various accounts, including an article by the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, or MAPS, Francis Crick, one of the Nobel Prize-winning scientists credited with the discovery of the DNA double helix, was reportedly under the influence of LSD during one of his most groundbreaking works. Francis Crick, along with James Watson, made the historic discovery of the double helix structure of DNA in 1953. This discovery was pivotal in understanding the genetic blueprint of life, and it revolutionized biology and medicine. The anecdote suggests that Crick's use of LSD played a role in his ability to visualize the double helix structure, which he described as a spiraled staircase of genetic information. While it's impossible to quantify the exact impact that LSD had on Crick's discovery, this story does highlight the potential use for psychedelics to influence scientific and creative breakthroughs. It also brings to light the broader context of the 1950s and 60s when many scientists, artists, and intellectuals experimented with psychedelics in search of inspiration and new ideas. So that's pretty cool, man. I mean, pretty cool. It's still illegal though, still a bad idea, don't do it. Sorry guys, the YouTube bot's gonna be on me for this one. Alright, let's talk about Pont-Saint-Esprit, France. The mass poisoning in Pont-Saint-Esprit, France is a mysterious and tragic event that occurred in 1951. The small village was thrust into chaos when a significant portion of its population began experiencing hallucinations, convulsions, and severe psychotic episodes. Initially, the incident was attributed to ergotism caused by ergot, a toxic fungus we already kind of talked about. It can infect rye and other cereals. However, over the years, the true cause of the outbreak has been the subject of much speculation and investigation. On August 15th, 1951, residents of Pont-Saint-Esprit started exhibiting bizarre symptoms. People reported feeling a burning sensation in their limbs, and many experienced intense hallucinations. Some saw terrifying images of animals or creatures, while others believed that they could fly or were under attack. The outbreak led to 5 deaths, severe hospitalizations, and hundreds of people affected to various degrees. Ergot poisoning, also known as St. Anthony's fire, seemed a plausible explanation at the time. Ergot contains alkaloids that can cause hallucinations and severe physical symptoms, mirroring what the residents experienced. Historically, ergotism has been responsible for similar outbreaks in Europe. Contaminated bread made from ergot-infected rye was believed to be the source of the poisoning. However, as time passed, doubts about the ergot theory grew. In the 1960s, the French government investigated the incident and found that the bakery's grain supply was likely not contaminated. This led to alternative theories, including the possibility of a covert chemical experiment gone wrong. In the 2000s, journalist Hank P. Abarelli Jr. published a book suggesting that the mass poisoning was a result of a secret CIA experiment. According to this journalist, declassified documents indicated that the CIA had been testing the use of LSD and other hallucinogens as part of this MK Ultra program. The theory posits that the CIA deliberately dosed the village's food supply to study the effects of these substances on a large population. But I mean, who knows? He didn't really bring like conclusive evidence, but it makes sense, kind of, you know, I don't know. And with that, we're done with the Psychedelics Iceberg. I really hope you guys like this one. Be sure to subscribe, you know, everything, join my Discord server. I had fun making this, and you guys seem to really like these drug videos, so thank you so much for watching, and yeah, have a great night, guys. Sweet dreams.